officially start.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. This is our latest session of our Stories Untold series. This program is a partnership between the Office of Human Resources and the President's Advisory Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This type of storytelling introduces members of our community to our family, to others who might not have had the opportunity to meet or speak to. As such, we build bridges and highlight the fact that even though we're all different, what brings us together is greater than what sets us apart. Today, I'm really honored to introduce my friend, who is an excellent role model, a leader, and of course, a fellow writer, Professor Katie Sweeting. We usually do not go too extensive with these introductions, as we want to leave sufficient time for the speaker to share. I just want to say that I'm really happy to be here today, and I look forward to Katie's story. Anna, is there anything else you would like to add before we start?
Thank you. I just wanted to add that stories have been used to find ways that we as humans make sense of our world. And so this is an opportunity for us to speak our voice and our truth. I was also reminded recently that we often don't have one single story that may define us. However, just the experience of sharing our narrative experience in life gives us the ability to see so many ways that tie our HCCC community. So we will give Professor Sweeting an opportunity to share her story, and then we would like the audience to participate and ask questions. So we will also be, as I mentioned, we will also be recording this session. Without further delay, I would like to ask Professor Katie Sweeting to share her story in the way that she wants it to be told.
I'm going to share my screen. The web of our life is of a mingled yarn, good and ill together. Good afternoon. My name is Katie Sweeting, and I really am honored to be here and to share with you today just a bit of my journey from the San Fernando Valley to Kenya, East Africa, to Queens, New York, and finally to Jersey City. And as I share my own experiences and how my experiences, my relationships, and my jobs have shaped my life and prepared me for my current role, I want you to think about your own life. So I'm giving you permission to not give me 100% of your attention, because I firmly believe that all the experiences that we have in our lives, in addition to being experiences that we're living through, are preparing us for the next stage of our life. So whether you're a faculty member, a student, a staff member, an administrator, a friend of mine, as I share a little bit about my journey, think about your own journeys and how both the good and bad jobs, relationships, experiences have all been preparing you for where you are right now. So 3 threads have that I'm going to weave through this talk have woven through my life, and that is teaching, multiculturalism, and compassion. I grew up in the relatively smog-free western end of the San Fernando Valley, as my dad liked to say. This is not the San Fernando Valley, because we don't get snow there. This is a picture of my family growing up. My mom and dad, my older brother and sister, that little girl is me, and that's my grandma. This picture is taken in Prescott, Arizona, where my grandparents had a house. So I am a valley girl. If you don't know what that means, look it up. And I grew up in a white family in a white neighborhood. And my parents, who were liberal Democrats, wanted to make sure that I didn't grow up racist. So they went out of their way to make friends with Black colleagues and others and integrate them literally into the family. And one of the first positive Black male role models in my life is this gentleman here, Lewis Coleman. And I think I'm about 8 in that picture. So my mom was very friendly and would chat up anybody. And She chatted with Louis every time he was bagging her groceries at Vaughn's supermarket. Eventually, she invited him over for dinner, and soon he became a lifelong family friend. He has been a friend of our family for over 50 years. And I most recently saw him at my mom's memorial in 2016. So my parents were intentional. I recently wrote an essay on that entitled How to Raise an Anti-Racist, a White Valley Girl's Perspective. So Lewis has claimed some credit for the fact that this family that I grew up in now looks like this family. That's my husband, and between me and my sister, our 3 sons are in the back. My brother is here on the left, and my aunt and my cousins. This bench that you see is in Sausalito, California, overlooking the bay there, right across from San Francisco. And it's actually my great-grandfather's bench. He was an Irish poet named Daniel O'Connell. So this is kind of a place for our family to visit, and it's our special place. So both of my parents were college professors. So I didn't come into this, kind of by accident. My dad taught psychology at Cal State Northridge, my alma mater, and my mom taught English at Santa Monica College. She was an adjunct teaching English at a community college for 27 years. Through junior high and high school, I was an active flute player. And the pinnacle of my flute playing was a class I had with Jean-Pierre Rampal. I played in traveling orchestras. I was the leader of the band in high school. And I thought I'd major in music and become a professional musician. But my last month in high school, I had a transformative experience that changed my priorities and the direction of my life. I was raised by 2 agnostic academics. My mom had a Mormon background, and her grandfather had 8 wives and 46 children, but she was not a practicing Mormon, and my dad was firmly in the agnostic camp. But I was seeking spiritually. I thought there was more to life than what I could see. Most of my best friends were Jewish growing up, so I almost converted to Judaism. But on May 7th, in my senior year of high school, I attended a concert at a church and went forward at an altar call. If you don't know what that is, it's a call to people who are not Christian to come forward and give their lives to Christ. And I did that and became a follower of Jesus at the age of 17, to my parents' chagrin. And that has been one of the most important decisions of my life. So instead of majoring in music, I decided to major in psychology and follow in my dad's footsteps. 20 years later, I went to graduate school and majored in English, following in my mom's footsteps. So you could see my parents had a really positive and very strong impact on my life and on who I am today. The multicultural strand comes in again. Between my junior and senior year of college, I had 2 really important experiences. One was a trip to Kenya, East Africa, and we were there for 2.5 months. This picture is of me working with some Maasai men, pastors. That's me and my partner, Lynn. And being in Africa, living there, seeing how most of the world lives, being enmeshed in another culture, a beautiful culture, really changed my life, opened my eyes, gave me a lifelong love for African culture. And also, I met a man while I was there who ended up being my husband. Bill Sweeting was part of this group of 30 of us from the US that went to different parts of East Africa. And he was the only African American in the group. I'll never forget, we were in a village with a lot of kids, and one little Kenyan girl came up to him and said, "Are you a Negro?" And he said, "Yeah, you are too, honey." This is 1979. So So fast forward a year, I graduated from college. I decided to go to seminary. And just coincidentally, I chose a seminary that was about an hour's bus ride away from where my husband lived in Harlem. And so that was another great experience. After I left seminary, I moved to Laurelton, Queens. If any of you are familiar, it's a Black neighborhood in Queens. In the early 1980s, Queens was the only county in the US where the Black median income was higher than the white median income. So my experience as a minority, again, I'm learning how to live not as part of a majority culture. And actually, since I've been married, I've never lived in a neighborhood that was white. So I had many positive experiences there, some negative experiences, but one experience really has stayed with me, and that was my commute. So I would get in a van every morning and take the van to the F train and take the F train into Manhattan to my job. And most of the people in the van were Black professional women. And I admired the way they dressed, and I admired the way they looked. And I wondered about our standard of beauty in this country. Is it Twiggy, or is it Beyonce, or is it, standards of beauty are based in a culture. And I was raised in a culture thinking that there was one standard of beauty. And as I looked around me, I said, these women are beautiful. So what does that make me? And it really gave me an understanding of just a little small understanding of what it feels like to be a minority, and where the standards of beauty do not match your own culture. It was a great lesson. During that time, I was the only white member of a 3,000 member Black church, Allen AME Church, and you can't really see the sign. That's my younger husband. That was one of the first times he preached there. It says Reverend William Sweeting. The pastor at the time was Reverend Floyd Flake, who also became a congressman for several years. So as a member of that church, I learned about Richard Allen, who the church is named after, and why he founded the AME Church. AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal. How Richard Allen had to walk out of a white church because he was told he couldn't pray at the altar. So my boyfriend at the time and he said, listen, Katie, I'm going to be in the Black church, and I'm going to live in a Black neighborhood. And if we're going to get married, I have to know that you will fit in and be able to contribute on your own. So I kind of was put through a test, and the test was go out and join this church and become a part of it and become a valuable part of it. So I made my own friends. I got involved in prison ministry. We went to Rikers one Sunday a month. I helped out with the young women and their cotillion kind of coming out ceremony. And after a couple of years, he said, yeah, you know what? I think you're a keeper. And we got married. This is our oldest son many years ago at our other church. So he decided to marry me. This is a church that he pastored for 15 years in Queens. So we got married, and 37 years later, we're still here. So thinking about these experiences and how they have impacted who I am has made a huge impact on who I am as a person and also who I am as a professor, given me an understanding of what it feels like to be a minority, given me an insight into Black American culture. So all of this has helped me, I think, to become a better person and a better professor. Then thinking about my jobs, I worked several different jobs, and in most of them, teaching was a pretty important component. My first job in New York City, I was a secretary at the Episcopal Church headquarters, typing and using shorthand. That's really old. Then I had a short stint at Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. That's Tusha Trellin in the front, our Estonian boss. And our job was to plan travel from their point of departure to their final destination. I'm talking about Vietnamese families of 15, Laotian families, Thai families, and also from Eastern Europe, Poland, Latvia, Estonia. This is the early mid 1980s. Again, multicultural thread weaving through, and also teaching was involved in that job. I worked at the Mental Health Association of Westchester County and headed their video collection, teaching teachers and parents how to recognize signs of mental illness and teaching about mental health. My next job was at the American Lung Association of Queens, and there I taught kids how to recognize triggers for asthma, how to use an inhaler. And at my interview, she showed me a magazine of the Lung Association. And in the magazine was a picture of my son giving a treatment to his bear at the age of 3. And that was because we had attended an event put on by the Lung Association, and that helped me get the job. My last job before going to graduate school and coming here was at an organization called Concerts of Prayer Greater New York, and their goal was to have reconciliation and have a multicultural prayer movement in New York City. One of the highlights of my time there was a 2,000 person conference I coordinated alongside the Christian Community Development Association at a Korean church in Queens. Again, we have Latino, Korean, Chinese, African, all kinds of churches and pastors involved in this. So that multicultural thread has been woven through my life. And I can't imagine living in an area that wasn't diverse. I can't do it anymore. The final thread of the yarn that I'm weaving together is compassion. Experiences with my own personal suffering and helping others as they suffer has extended my capacity, and I hope made me also a better teacher. Both of my parents have died. My dad died pretty young. It was heartbreaking, one of the hardest things I've been through. And my mom died just a few years ago, and I was with her when she took her last breath. Going through grieving has helped me understand a little bit of what other people go through. We all grieve differently. We grieve each death differently, but it's given me more compassion and understanding. I was hospitalized for a week several years ago, and being in the hospital, being on that side of it, gave me a better understanding when I visit people, what it's like to be in the bed instead of standing up and looking down at them. And last year, when a dear friend of mine, who was also a student at the college, asked me to come to the hospital when her toddler was on life support, I didn't hesitate to go in the room and be with her where Janelle was hooked up to life support, and to walk with her through the grief when she died and to help her plan the funeral. So when students tell me about their struggles, their grief, their loss, I hope I can listen with empathy and with compassion. And this past year, we have all had way too many chances and experiences to understand the struggles our students go through. So my earlier experiences with multiculturalism were mostly in Black American culture. But over the past 15 years, I've had more experiences in other kinds of culture. Our current church is not a Black church. It's very diverse. We have members from over 25 countries. And while I love communicating cross-culturally, it's not always easy. And we see this with our students. It takes effort, it takes patience, flexibility, forgiveness. So in 2018, I had another awesome opportunity to visit India, and I have learned more about Indian culture. There's a large Indian population here in Jersey City, so that has just enriched my life. So my friends now are from places like, this is a group of some of my best friends for 35 years. And here is a tea party with friends from Cote d'Ivoire, Korea, Puerto Rico, DR, Trinidad. So as I close, and I hope you've been thinking about your own experiences, multiculturalism, compassion, think about what experiences and relationships you've had which has helped you understand values of another culture, how it has helped you in your current role, whether you're an advisor, a teacher, a student. So I really appreciate you listening. I don't like talking about myself for this long, but I appreciate the opportunity. And I hope you didn't just learn something about me. I hope you learned something about yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. So I definitely want to take the opportunity and advantage of asking questions. It looks like we have a lot of applause here. So if we were, it looks like if we were in a room, there would be a lot of applause, maybe even a standing ovation. So we really appreciate your story and how meaningful you thought about the story and what you were bringing to us today. So I did want to perhaps ask the first question. And so as a writer, I happen to know that you have written or are in the process of writing a historical novel. And with that, I was wondering if you can talk about the idea of authenticity. What advice would you have for your students or colleagues about being authentic?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm kind of ambitious in some ways. Bob and I were talking about this the other day because I created an online course and I was way too ambitious about all the things I wanted to include in it. And that's true in other parts of my life too. So my historical novel is about Olaudah Equiano, who's one of my all-time favorite guys, even though he died in 1795, and his daughter and his sister. And so you're asking about the question of authenticity. I finished is a tricky word when it comes to writing because you're never finished, because as we all know, all writing is rewriting. So you're never finished. But I finished a draft of the book and sent it out to some publishers, didn't get any contracts yet. I'm back in the book. And the two characters are both 12, and one is African from Nigeria. She's been kidnapped along with her brother, Olaudah Equiano. And the other is a biracial girl, Equiano's daughter. And I'm using first person for both of them. So how can I, as an older white woman who has grown up in America, have an authentic voice for these two characters? Well, I don't know. You'll have to tell me when you read the book. But I think immersing myself in culture, I visited plantations. I think being in places helps. I mean, you could do all the research you want on the computer, but as I told my husband, I have to go to England. I just have to. And I went to England and visited the church where Equiano's daughter's husband was the pastor, talked to people who knew of them, didn't know them, obviously. She died in the mid 1800s. But I think part of being authentic is, as a writer, is allowing all these experiences to shape you and also trying to walk in another person's shoes.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Yours?
I have one, but I would rather cede the floor to some of the others who might have
Okay.
comments.
I see my husband just popped on here. Hi, honey.
No, I've been here for a little while.
Oh, okay. You have a question? Anything you didn't know?
Mm, No response.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you, dear.
So, Katie, my question deals with advice to students. You know, keeping in mind your journey, what you've been through, what your experiences. The students that are on the call that might be thinking about being writers, writing, you know, but maybe they don't find the time. Maybe, you know, the prospect of writing a book might seem intimidating. You know, where should they start?
As they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So that's how you write, one sentence at a time, one word at a time. And the first draft is easy. As I tell my students, the first draft is like vomit. You just getting it out there. Whoa! It's not pretty. It's something you want to avoid at all costs, right? But then you work on it, you fix it, you rewrite. So, I mean, the advice usually is try and write every day. That works for some people. It doesn't work for others. Maybe summers is a good time for you to write. But as I'm telling my students now who are in my capstone and they have a longer paper than most classes, it's at least 15 pages, break it down into bite-sized pieces. 2 pages here, 3 pages here. I'm giving a talk. 5 pages here. Break it down into something that you can manage, right? And be kind to yourself.
I think being kind is necessary now. It's necessary everywhere, but I think it's necessary now. We all have our pressures with teaching and learning and working. So it's definitely a good time for kindness. Does anyone else have questions? Feel free to leave them in the chat also.
This is Lalisa. I don't have a question per se. I just have a comment, if that's all right to make a comment as well.
Sure.
So, Katie, thank you so much for sharing, your very not only powerful for me, but interesting story. Being a woman, that grew up around people in the church and have a very strong relationships with many of them. It's just refreshing to know that from the day I met you, 7 years ago, because we met at the interview back when I got hired here, and just to know that you were there from my beginning, and that you're still around, and we've interacted many times together. And at the time, I didn't know that we had so many things in common. I mean, even down to the fact that I spent time at the Allen AME Church in New York, and with President Floyd Flake, and many, many things. So I'm just amazed at how, you could work alongside people and have so much in common with them and not know it, but yet know something that is something about that person, right? From the times we might see each other walking up and down Sip Avenue or anywhere else around Journal Square to around conference tables. But just I'm very impressed with your full journey, and I'm so glad I got a chance to hear the whole story. So thank you.
Well, that's not the whole story.
No.
That's some of it.
No, right.
I left out some of the bad parts.
Right, but
Amen.
I'm glad you included a lot of the good parts.
Yeah.
Because when you
Amen.
work around people and you're always looking for ways to motivate people, and like yours has said, and Anna has alluded to, our stories are so powerful. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Lalisa.
So if I can piggyback on the hard parts, right? We all have hard parts. What can you share with us that a challenge, I would say, a hard part or a challenge that you went through your life, that you experienced in your life, that taught you that more than whatever was happening, that taught you sort of a bigger lesson in life than the challenge that you were going through?
So many of you and myself might set goals, and you might have certain goals and expectations for yourself, for your children, for your career. And I have not met some of those goals. And my kids have done things that are unexpected and sometimes unwelcome. But I think learning to live in the moment and focus on what you have and not on what you don't have is the best way to go about it. And I think also as a young person traveling to another country, it really helps you get perspective that we have so much here and we don't even know how much we have because we're too busy complaining about what we don't have. So I think having the glass half full kind of concept and really being appreciative, honestly, during COVID, and I'm like, I'm glad I'm breathing and I have a bed to sleep in and a door to close, you know, simple things.
That's really important. I don't want to take the floor, so I do want to encourage perhaps one of Professor Sweeting's students to share, if not ask a question, perhaps share something about Professor Sweeting that she would appreciate hearing.
Uh-oh.
Or other colleagues then. There are more than 50 people on this call.
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And I think you give an excellent example of how your parents went out of their way to, give you a good foundation, a good dynamic foundation, which you've used wonderfully. And as another pastor's wife, I appreciate hearing your story. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Trisha. And I really, I feel strongly that it's not enough to not pass down racism to our kids. We have to actively teach them not to be racist. Otherwise, the culture will take over and it won't be a good result. So I think we have to be very deliberate, as my parents were, very deliberate. They were members of the Fair Housing Council, the NAACP. So when I said, "Guess who's coming to dinner?" they're like, "What? You can't say anything. You raised me. You should have expected this, that I would end up falling in love with and marrying a black man." Right, honey?
Whatever you say, dear. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
he's learned the trick to a good marriage.
I have something. It's Karen. So, like, when I think about Katie, I think about how supportive you are as a colleague, that you create this space for someone like me who is a junior faculty member, but with my own experiences before coming here, that you create a space to, I guess, like, guide and foster the way that I teach and the way that I think about curriculum development. I've oftentimes wondered, like, how do you create that space in your classrooms, or how do you create that space with your students? Because I love it as your colleague.
That's a really good question. I think a lot of it is getting out of our own way. And I think as I've gotten older to
Too.
have enough self-esteem so that I don't have to be the one doing something. I can see others who can do something well and ask them to do it. I'm getting better at that as I get older. I wasn't always good at that. I'd like, oh, I'll do it. I'll do it. Now I'm more like, no, I think this person will be best for this and this person will be best for this. And in the class, I continually tell them, we are learning together. I'm learning from you. You're learning from me. You're teaching me. And I'm trying to, this is hard. So faculty members, I'd be curious, what you think of this, but sharing the responsibility for some of the assignments. Even today, I had a speech class and I'm letting them decide how they want to handle the honors speech. And in my capstone class, I'm letting them choose some of the readings. So giving them more ownership of the process is something that's a little hard for me, but I think it makes the learning so much more powerful for them. Anybody else trying to do that in your class? Let your students decide some things? How's that working?
Working great.
One of the things I did when I thought was we would have elections, democratic elections. It's like, okay, do we take a break or do we go straight and leave like 15, 20 minutes early? You see half of the class, and it was a wonderful exercise in politics, I guess.
Yeah.
I let students decide. I give them like a choice of 5 different assignments and decide which of the 5 they want to do.
Oh, that's good. I like that. But
Yeah.
do they all have to do that one, or they can all do something different?
They have to do one of the. They all have to do an assignment. They all have to do an assignment based on these 5 different topics. So one, they each have to choose one off that list, but they have to do that assignment. Yes.
Oh, that's sweet, Amala. Thank you.
Heather, did you want to ask something? I see a raised hand.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Karen said. When I joined Hudson, Katie, you were such a great resource for questions. You continue to be a great resource for questions. You're very welcoming, and the way that you were a great support for me, that sort of set the tone for how I approached other people that I work with and my students here at Hudson, and it's been really helpful. Um, I also give my students a lot of autonomy in my 102 class. We're doing research papers and I let them pick their topic, and they can choose whatever they want. I approve it, but it's so much fun to learn about them, and learn about what they're interested in. And my students teach me things every day. One of my students today, he makes bespoke clothing. And I'm just so, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so amazed by you. So our students are wonderful. And I think it's great when they get to have a voice in that process.
I agree.
I remember the first time I met Katie. It was in the brand new All College Council. We're in the technology committee, and she was the chair of that committee. And then there was a need for a chair of the All College Council. And then I remember that Katie was the first the first chair for that body, and she did a fabulous job. And
That
you
was
always wonder,
baptism by fire. It's much calmer today.
but are there any other questions? Any other comments from anyone else in the audience?
Hi, everyone. Katie, I have a question. You told us how your parents raised an anti-racist family. So what would be the one suggestion that you would make if you're going to raise a family that's aware of many cultures and you're going to live and communicate and be friends with people of different cultures? What is one thing that you can say that parents should not do? We heard all the right things.
That's a good question. Parents should not do. Well, they shouldn't be racist. But I think what they should not do is ignore their own issues, right? So we recently saw somebody made a coach, help me out here who remembers this story. A coach made really racist comments about a high school basketball team. And he had an apology that was like so bad. The apology was like, but I'm married, I'm a family man, and you were using the N-word all over the place. And how does that excuse you being a family man? So I think what I would say is what we should not do is ignore the fact that we all have some level of racism. Don't ignore that. Confront it, own up to it, and then you can move on from there. But if you don't acknowledge what's in your own heart, you're not going to help anybody else's heart. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to acknowledge our own stuff.
I shared with Katie earlier that I remember the first time that I saw her, met her when came to HCCC. I think Dr. Friedman introduced us, and he introduced you as, oh, this is Katie Sweeting. She's like amazing English professor, just got promoted. And I remember, even just besides that, your just persona, you were so, you have this calm about you. This calm that is very intriguing. But yet at the same time, you were wearing something really bright and blue, something like bright earrings. And so it was this kind of conflict. I'm like, do I approach you or do I not approach you? But Dr. Friedman's introduction definitely kind of made it easier. And so, but I remember that moment. It stands out to me. And so since then, I've always sort of, if I saw you at meetings, you would always stand out to me. And you so it just, that's just the kind of person that I think you are. There's something about you in terms of whether it's your physical appearance or just your demeanor. It is welcoming, but very thoughtful. And so it's interesting to have had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit over time as we've had discussions kind of here and there. So I just wanted to share that. I was curious, I know that you've shared that, there were moves across country. You started off in California, you were in Queens for a long time, now you're in Jersey City. It sounds like there were a lot of professional changes as well. And I know you had plans, big plans with a Fulbright to go to India. I hope that still works out. I really do. I'm rooting for you. But within those contexts, I was wondering, what are some of the what ifs? Like, what if I had done this, or what if I haven't done this? Do you think about that? And do you, no?
No, I really don't. And when we move, I really don't look back. I left California, and some people are like, why would you leave California and come to Queens or Jersey City? I don't really look back. I look ahead. And I don't really do the what if. I don't know why, but it's like, where am I now? And I try and make the most of where I am. So I'm in Jersey City. That was not a move that my husband and I were like, let's go to Jersey City. No, sorry. He got called to a church, and so we came to Jersey City. And I didn't really like it all that much at first. I have grown to love it. But what I try and do is find things around here that I can love. I love the waterfront. I'll walk on the waterfront any chance I get. I love kayaking and the Hackensack River. There's really good bird watching over there. So put me anywhere you want, but let me find a place where I can be out in nature, where I can enjoy, even if it's in the middle of a city, then I'm a happy girl.
That's good advice.
Hey, Kitty, great,
Hi, David.
great conversation. I enjoyed it. I feel like we had something in common with the whole Broadway thing that we would always talk about. I'm curious, with you guys having 3 sons, how are you navigating that experience with your sons, especially in this environment that we're in?
You want to take that one, Bill?
This is your talk, not mine.
Okay, all right.
But I think I don't know if I'm permitted or allowed to, but I think as an African American dad, you always got to have the talk. I've had to talk with my sons, uh, way back when, so I've had encounters with law enforcement, both here and where we lived previously, and even on different trips. I can remember one specific encounter when my son was graduating from boot camp, from Navy boot camp, and my wife was driving. We were driving. A friend of hers allowed us to stay at their place in a pretty exclusive, almost all white area. And my wife was driving with these four African American males, and we got stopped at night by the police. So yeah, I mean, that's something I think we know as African American males. That's something that if we do have sons, or we do have nephews, or we do have grandsons, or whatever the case might be, that's a conversation that we have to have pretty early with our sons. Like when you encounter police, how do you react? How do you respond? Do you remain calm, you follow all the directions, you don't become belligerent, you kind of suppress the anger that you have inside. So if that answers, I hope that partly answers your question. Like, you
Yep.
can't avoid not doing that. You
Absolutely.
have to do that. Yeah, you have to do that. And it's an ongoing reminder as well. It's not
Ongoing.
like a one-time conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ongoing reminder, because that's part of our history. That's part of where we are. Um, but also as a pastor, I minister to a larger body. So when George Floyd was killed, and when all of the different protests and things were happening, I gave some guidelines to young people from the church, about joining protests. Like, do not go on in any of these events by yourself. Do not make sure whoever you go with, them. Make sure your parents, or the responsible adults in your life, know what's going on. Like, those are the kind of conversations you have to have. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah. Didn't mean to rain on your parade there.
No, you're helping my parade. You're holding up the banner.
Good.
Anyone else wants to share?
I
I'd like
have a
to hear from.
comment.
Go ahead.
Sharing your story with us, professor, is highly appreciated. I remember last year in the church located in Rome Street nearby the Drama Square, you were giving us voluntary classes in English. That helped me a lot. I appreciate it, professor. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I remember last year before the pandemic.
Okay, what level were you in? Who was your teacher?
Oh, I was in the level 4. You were my teacher.
Okay. Oh, I
Yeah,
did that
and
a few
then
times. Yeah.
yes, and then I came to Hudson County Community College. And
Okay.
then and that helped me a lot when I take my placement test, and then I got level 4, and then now I'm in my major right now.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Thank
I'm
you,
so happy
professor.
to hear it. I have another former ESL student here. Lisange hasn't said hi yet, but that's okay.
Katie, I want to ask one final question to you, and maybe also to Pastor Sweeting. We are living in very challenging times. The country is polarized. Like, you would have to go back decades to see this type of polarization. We also had probably the largest civil rights movement or mobilization of civil rights over the summer, right? The question that has come up, some intellectuals have brought it up: is this a moment, or is this really a movement? And what comes after this? Like, where are the areas of opportunities for us as a society? Does that make sense?
I'm going to kick that one back to you, William.
I'm about to take my lunch break, so no. Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive question, and I don't know that there's an easy answer. I would say that you said, is it just a moment or just a movement? If I understood,
If this is a moment that is going to yield
yeah,
changes.
I think it's too early to say. You know, I think it's definitely possible that it's a movement rather than just something that happens in the point of history and there's no significant change. But you know, significant change doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with just the change of this particular administration. We have a new president. It's something that, you know, we have to look at long term. That's my perspective. What will things look like 5 or 10 years from now, 15 years from now? You know, what will things look like then? You know, then I could look back and say, you know what, no, it was just a moment. We don't, because this country is a juvenile when you compare to other countries in terms of the age of our country. So, I think some significant change, if you want to call it a movement rather than a moment, is going to take place. Is going to have to happen over time. I think the better question would be, what's my role in that? How do I see myself involved in this? If it's a movement, and do I have that kind of perspective of a long term? Like, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. And am I willing to use my spaces and my influence to move this forward? And recognize that this is something that's going to be long term. It's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be, this administration is not going to solve what's happened over years and years and years and years, if that makes sense.
I would just add to that. I hope it is a movement, because unfortunately there's another movement, and that's the white supremacist movement that's gone about crazy now. So we need to have another movement to counteract that. Absolutely.
Thank you both.
I'm so glad you came, honey.
I would just make a comment, if I could. I appreciate the HCC, the community, and the diversity of both the administration and all of you who serve. You do a fantastic job and a much needed job in our community and beyond. So I want to thank all of you who are connected with Hudson Community College. You're part of the movement, if I could say it. And just your diversity and what you guys represent in terms of the student body.
If I can say something.
Hi, Royal.
Go ahead, Royal.
Hi, Katie, sweetie. Professor Sweetie, I have students on here, and I'm so elated. I'm so amazed as it relates to your story. From the beginning of your story to the middle of your story to the end. And we don't even have all of it, right? And so I say this in regards to your shaping, as you made mention, the molding in terms of your beginnings with your parents and how they, I like the word illuminate or radiate, right? And for your light that is shining tremendously. I just want to say, and even your husband, God bless you, Mr. Sweeting, you're both powerful. This platform that the college
gives us in terms of sharing our stories and sharing the authenticity of who we are is absolutely amazing. And you're going to hear the phone behind you, that's why I had the camera off. But I'm, I'm taken back because of who you are. This is Women's History Month. And to me, you are beyond a woman who has became, a woman that is yet becoming, and a woman that I now look up to even the more. There are several women here that I'm inspired and admired by, but now that I have, really heard and listened, in other words, I listened to how you was sharing your story, even as it relates to the weaving, the way you fit it, or how it was befitting within your story is like, wow. Like you done made me want to come up another level, if I can say that. And so thank you for sharing. And I know that the student, I believe the name was Yasin, as he referenced and as he pointed out that, you were actually, I believe, one of his first teachers, instructors. He was an ESL student. And to now see him and to hear him speak, even as it relates to who you are and who you yet will continue to be for him, right? Someone that is impactful, someone that is insightful. And your third point of reference, which was compassion. I just commend you. There's nothing else I have to say. I'm dropping the mic right now. How about that?
Thank you. Thank
Thank
God.
you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you, Royal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Royal. That was definitely a mic drop. Katie, I really can't thank you enough for giving us permission not to listen 100%, but just take that a little bit of that percent and think introspectively about our own ways that we, for me, for example, that we teach our kids about what's going on in the world right now, and and take proactive steps to do so. Think about one thing that you did that I thought was really powerful, showing the pictures of your friends, right? And I'm thinking, how will my friends look like if I'm sharing pictures 30 years from now or 40, however many years from now? Because right now my pictures look very different. And that makes me reflect on what I do every day, what I and the people that I connect with every day. So I do thank you so much for making us think in that way. I am sorry that we have to close.
Okay, thank you for having me.
People are, I know people are heading off to other meetings and appointments. Yours, is there anything else you want to add as part of our closure today, at least?
I just really wanted to thank Katie and Pastor Sweeney for coming today, for everyone who joined us. And the story, it's powerful, like so many others that we've heard before, and hopefully some of the others that we will hear. And the point to this is that, I want you to know that, at least for me, like I'm looking and I see the two of you, one as a unit, as a marriage, and separately as leaders in that community, someone that people could look up as role models, So some people that will bring improvements to the community, to the society, and like to all of us in the call, just know that your actions are looked, and people are always looking for role models and for inspiration, And again, I thank both of you for the time, and thank everyone else for coming, and just be on the lookout for more stories untold. If you think of anyone that if you want to share your story, if you know someone who has a compelling story that you would like to hear, let us know, and we'll try to get it here. But nothing else on my end. But Katie, I wanted to give you the floor the last minute if you wanted to say something in closing.
I'm just really thankful for my life partner over there, Bill Sweeting. He is half the story. It's me and him together.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.